Biaheza just might be the fastest growing finance YouTube channel.
Whoa!
But he needs your help.
Bought into the S&P last Thursday.
In this series, I rate YouTubers $100,000 stock portfolio updates to show you how Biaheza can improve if he wants to calculate and communicate his performance, and tell you why his performance might actually be way higher than we think, or way worse. We're going to start Biaheza off out of 10 and deduct a point anytime we don't get enough information to know his true performance. And before we can tell Biaheza any tips to improve, we have to first expose certain things on Robinhood. On this channel, we've also been doing a Robinhood stock portfolio journey. On our journey, we put in $1,000 on September, October, and November 23rd, as you see here. However, if you go all the way back to the beginning, you'll see that Robinhood says our beginning balance was $3,000. But that doesn't make any sense. We started with 1,000 and then continued to contribute to it. Where we see this become an issue is if you go back to a random day in between, say November 19th, for example, you'll see that Robinhood calculates our return at 6.73%, which is the gains we made, $201.99, divided by all the contributions, so $3,000. Even though on November 19th, we only had $2,000 that we put in, and November 23rd is when we put in the $3,000. Meaning, this chart and these percentages are not your rates of return. In fact, the only time they're actually your rate of return is if your beginning balance matches all the contributions you made. i.e., if you took a sum of money and put it into a portfolio and never put any money in or took any money out. That's the only time you can use the rates of return. So, let's go back to Biaheza and watch what he uses.
So I started this portfolio in February 2019, so that's a little over a year ago.
One thing I didn't really like about this is he doesn't actually give us a start date, because if he did, Robinhood would show $0 and 0% gains just like this. However, before you throw shade, I know we can assume it was probably February 17th, the day before he showed us, but I don't like playing the assumption game, and ultimately we don't have to, because after what I showed you about Robinhood not showing us the actual returns we made, we can definitively conclude that we won't know his true performance. It's also kind of funny to know that now that we know the chart's messed up on Robinhood, when he showed us that he peaked earlier before he made the video, we actually don't know if that's a peak or not. However, he's on a social media tear, so we know for certain he's not peaking anytime soon. But in all seriousness, we have to bring his portfolio update 2 and 8 and provide our first tips on how to improve portfolio updates from here. And the first one we have is to provide a transaction history. With the transaction history, we'll be able to get his actual rate of return and more, which we'll talk about in a second. In addition, I also want to say not to use Robinhood's return, which is also called total return. And we talked about that in a previous video where we exposed Daniel Pronk's math and his method on calculating and communicating performances.
For the year, we have 32% gains on here, even with this crash. That's kind of crazy, but again, mostly due to Tesla.
Before we go any further, I just want to say that I can do any kind of investment portfolio, whether it's stocks, real estate, Pokemon cards, whatever. So if you have any suggestions and any person you want me to review, definitely leave it in the comment section below. But we're going to move on and deduct another point for the heavy use of average cost per share. Watch.
As you can see from my history, I started buying literally a few days after my 18th birthday in February 2019, so my average cost is at $317. Next up in this brokerage, I have 22 shares of Facebook with an average cost of $187 per share. So I'm rocking with the S&P 500 at an average cost of $293. And the final stock in this portfolio is my 3 shares of Amazon with an average cost of $1,789. I have 30 more shares of Spine here at a $268 average, 55 shares of VTI at an average of $130, and then 20 more shares of Facebook at $164, and the rest are new positions.
Alright, we get it. He uses average cost per share and a lot. And we talked about how meaningless this metric is to us in a previous video, but I'll sum it up really quickly here. Average cost per share ignores the time value of money and gives us no insight to the likeness of a company at a certain valuation, only a price, which can be different. And that concludes our portfolio update before we get into the lightning round. So let's jump in. Lightning round! First off, there was no consideration for taxes. As you know, they can make a huge difference in someone's portfolio. And that could be solved as our tip with a transaction history. Also, what could have been solved with transaction history is the use of a benchmark. It's one thing to tell me how well a portfolio performed, but it's another to tell me how it performs in relation to something else. Lastly, he did use asset allocation. However, he made the same mistakes all across the board, meaning not only can't we tell what his performance is in Robinhood, but we can't tell what it is across all his portfolios, bringing his final portfolio score to a 4. But there's a silver lining. Okay, maybe half a silver lining. Remember when I said we couldn't use total return? Well, you actually can use it in one other instance, and that's if you take a snapshot of a time in the portfolio where there's no contributions or withdrawals. So Biaheza recently started a $1 million day trading challenge where he's taking $99,000, we'll call it $100,000, and building it to $1 million day trading. Even though later in the episodes he references that $50,000 he started with earlier, we'll just ignore that and assume he's just going $100,000 to the $1 million day trading challenge. Well, so far he's not added any money or taken any money out of the portfolio. This means we can't use total return in this instance. But one thing I just want to consider with everybody here is, what do you think the odds are that he's not going to put any more money into the portfolio? I mean, the guy is trying to 10x a portfolio. That is a tremendous amount of luck and skill that goes into doing something like that. The odds of that happening are so slim. So I find, and I'm not going to say with him because he seems pretty adamant that he's not going to put any money into it yet, but with most portfolio updates that they'll start contributing money, and the moment he does, and especially because I don't think he knows total return from internal rate of return, that we can't use the rate of return. And when we don't get transaction history, then we don't actually get to figure it out. Also, without transaction history, we're limited to only pre-tax returns and can't do after-tax. And some of the other things I talked about earlier, like the average cost per share that some people are interested in, you can't get an equivalent without transaction history. Also, you can't get a benchmark. I mean, there's so many other things. In conclusion, though, in this $100,000 stock portfolio video that Biaheza did, we do not have enough information to know his actual performance. It could be way higher or way worse than we think. However, without more information, we won't actually know. So my one tip, if I had to give one tip to Biaheza, it would be to provide the transaction history. Probably in a spreadsheet, link it in the description, kind of like I do in the videos. So that way you always have access to it and you can see how the portfolio did within certain times. That's just the way I like to do it. But that's up to you and how transparent you want to be and stuff like that. But that's all I have for you in this video, and brings me to, I need your help. We're trying to bring a strong, like-minded community into the finance YouTube space to help this finance community improve. And the best way that you can help out is by buying stock in that subscriber count. It really helps the channel go a long way, and I really appreciate your support. But again, that's all I have for you in this video, so make sure you like that smash button by stocking our subscriber count and Liberty Bell that notification icon. Thanks for watching, and until next time.